back, everybody, to another episode of Doctor Who in Review, presented by Diversely Geek, by Nisha M., your geek mom, of course.
Why, hello there. This is Nisha M., your geek mom, and we are joined by the amazing Louis Lacal from Man Bites Media.
And, of course, you guys know my voice already, and we have an awesome, badass guest. Come on, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Molly Marcus, and I am a lifelong Whovian. I'm proud of it.
Yes, indeed. So we got we're close to a century worth of experience of Doctor Who at this point between all three of us. That's awesome.
Well, both Molly and I have been watching since. Well, she started at 9, and I started at 10.
Yeah, so you're talking about 80 years right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've been watching for 20, so
Give away our age, thank you very much.
Oh, whatever. So we're reviewing this year's season finale of season 11 of Doctor Who, the first season with Jodie Whittaker, and let's go right into it. What did you guys think of this final episode, this wrap up? How do you think you enjoyed how Chibnall and the rest of the writers actually wrapped up this whole season?
I guess I could start. I kind of liked how they brought Tim Shaw back into it, and I had a feeling it was Tim Shaw even when we saw the blurry image, just because of the voice. They're like, oh, I know that voice. So I felt like it was kind of coming full circle, and I liked that they reconnected the stories, because they were kind of like one-offs the whole time through. And so with this one, there was a lot of good psychology. You have Graham struggling, and you have Ryan saying I love you to Graham, and you have
and the fist bump heard around the world.
right But I also thought it was really interesting, and with how they brought in the Ux and how the role that they played in this too, because I wasn't quite sure where it was going in the very beginning. I'm like, who are these psychic beings who are playing with rocks? And then all of a sudden we see this blurry image of
tomfoolery. It was. Sorry, go ahead.
It was tomfoolery. Shenanigans. But it was. But when they showed the blurry image, I'm thinking, it's metal. What is that? Oh, better not be a Dalek.
Oh my God! I was so expecting it to happen. I really was. I'm sorry.
Oh, I saw it from a mile away. It was a superhero landing. I was like, oh no. Are they doing a superhero episode? That was the first thing I thought. I was like, oh no. Why are they? No. Are they going to do this?
Yeah.
But, oh man. Delph and Andino?
Andino. Delph and Andino.
Delph and Andino, they're such great introduction of a race to Doctor Who.
Beautiful.
And I love that whole aspect. One of my favorite series is Aliens, and the whole introduction of the prequels of Prometheus, and that concept of the builders and that's
what I thought of too. That's
the first thing that went through my head.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is fascinating to see. And I wanted to see how far they were going to link this race to the creation of the universe. And I was like, okay, where are they going to go with this? It has the potential of so much. And I love how they introduced that, and they went with that concept, and they built the world of Doctor Who further. And anybody that says that they weren't building the world of Doctor Who, here you guys go. You got world building, guys. It's there.
Literally.
And they literally opened with world building.
Yeah.
I love the Ux.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ux are cool.
Saying, I would be an Ux.
Oh, no, I'd love to be that.
Yeah. Let's talk about Graham. Or rather,
we're not going to go straight into the story of Graham, Lewis.
Oh.
You really go through the whole thing first? Jeez.
No.
Graham, I know.
Graham.
Always Graham.
Graham's his man.
It is so true.
That man, let me tell you.
Graham is his Gramps.
Yeah, seriously, the trials and tribulation that man goes through in this season, and the moments that he encounters, and the judgments that he has to do to grow as a person, it's I went along with him in that journey. I felt everything that he was experiencing. That moment where he's about to point that gun and see what he's going to do, that moment was just so crucial, and I felt the exact same thing that he was feeling. Like, should I shoot him? Should I shoot him? I probably would have done another judgment, but that's what makes him a better person than me in that sense. I don't know how he composed himself and kept himself from doing that and allowing
Ryan.
his revenge to take.
Yeah, it was totally Ryan.
It was Ryan.
Yeah.
It was Ryan. There was no question about it, because we're talking about it. It takes you away. The reason that Graham is able to distinguish between the surrealistic AI version of Grace and the real Grace is that this manifested version was so willing to throw away Ryan, and that is the connecting point. That is basically the backbone of the relating for this entire companionship. Is really truly the focus is in Ryan. So for Graham, the voice of reason that he will listen to is going to be Ryan's, because that is Grace's voice to him.
That's
you know
very
what I'm
true.
saying? So this is why he could walk away, and it takes you away. Because he's like, well, sorry, pal, you screwed up. And so in the long run, I mean, I could be wrong, but this is how I feel about it. It's Ryan saying, Graham, no.
Now, even with that being said, I wouldn't have put him in what they put him in. He would have gotten ejected out of an airlock or something, and I would not allow him to survive. Because that, one way or another, even if it's not killing him directly or murdering him directly, it would have been indirectly. Because let me tell you, that guy does not survive after that. It just, no. There's certain things that you could allow, but I can't see that being okay.
Yeah, but time in and time out with Doctor Who.
I know.
It's very rare that they will purposely do that.
I know. It's one of those things that it's my moral compass isn't up to code yet on Doctor Who.
So let's be fair. If I was standing next to you and that was the choice you had to make, you would not choose to do it that way, because your moral compass is there. And I think for a lot of us, that is the truth is that we would not choose violence in the long run. We would not willingly choose to do that, because while our anger, it sits there and it festers, and we may have the thoughts in the long run, this episode is asking us, would we be willing to follow through on that act of violence? And it is something that Doctor Who has done from time immemorial. It takes us to the precipice of decision making, ethical principles, and ask us, are you going to be willing to push that button when the time comes? So
and
go ahead.
Because the Doctor clarifies, absolutely, because Ryan's like, well, what are all these weapons? I thought you said no weapons. And the Doctor's like, well, walls, this, that, and the other, not people.
Yeah, and I get that. It's that staying to the code and staying true to that code of Doctor Who, and I get that 100%. It's just me as a human, me, Lewis, I would struggle with that decision, just like Graham did. And that's why I identify so much with Graham's character, because I see the turmoil, the inner turmoil that he went through in this episode and this season, for that matter, because I've been there through those same turmoils.
Well, yeah, I mean, I felt like then they take you away. I know we're trying to focus on the last season, but it ties into this one. I thought it was very hurtful of the creature in the last one to produce the dead wife and dead Grace.
It was cruel.
Imagine. It was very cruel, horribly cruel. And I was just thinking the whole episode. I was like, oh my God, poor Graham. I wasn't invested in the other character so much, the dad, but for Graham, I was like, oh, not again.
Yeah, I know. Graham's gotten the short end of the stick this season, that's for sure.
Well, I'm not sure that that's true. I mean, in the long run, yes, he has suffered a loss that is unimaginable, right?
Yeah.
But he has the family. He has a wealth of family that he didn't have prior. I think that you're talking about Graham, having to go through an emotional.
He's gone through the most emotional turmoil.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to talk really quickly, if you don't mind me saying something to you, and see where you guys think about this.
Sure.
Look at this episode, right? You then the entire overwhelmingly throughout the entirety of the season, the Doctor, while the Doctor's absolutely joyful, playful, but at the same time brilliant in the science, brilliant in the mind and thinking things through and pulling.
And inventions, yeah.
And inventing, exactly, and the creativity, just so brilliant. Which the Doctor is so careless, because this willingness to bring these companions along all the way until we get to this place and just walk them like willy-nilly into this absolute abyss. And she's like, sure, come on. Yeah, no, you stay back. Nope, I'm coming. Okay, fine. Look, what is that, man? The whole entire season, the Doctor just walks them willfully, recklessly into these situations.
Well, the Doctor doesn't do it. They volunteered for it.
They volunteer, but the Doctor still says yes.
Right. Well, here's the thing. I'm chalking it up to the Doctor still getting used to being in this body, in this personality, because I felt like in every single episode, the Doctor never really settled into who they were yet. And we see Capaldi kind of get to that point earlier in his first year, I think. And he certainly wasn't as reckless as Bill. And if anything, he was more cautious, except for the few episodes where he really didn't take care of Bill. But that's a different.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh,
but I think that to your point, Nisha, you're absolutely correct. I'm feeling like, well, what do you mean they're going to go with you? That's really super dangerous, and these people are just kind of along for the ride, and and magically they're okay. So I didn't like the whole "they're magically okay" part of it. Except
I kind of don't dig that at all, really. Honestly, I don't. But I mean, it was still a running theme. There we go, my theme. Me, Lewis. I had to give you one.
But I mean, it's that sense, and that I will give you as a fault of Chibnall throughout the season, is that there is no stakes in this season at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not. There's no sense of danger. There's no real sense of danger. I mean, we have momentary lapses of it, but it's very momentary, and then they drift away very quickly.
Well, the most I felt the danger was in Rosa, and it was only the danger because of the racial stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the only danger I felt.
Because the history of it, so you know where it could go.
Right.
But it's nothing that was presented on screen. So it goes
was
back.
In your mind.
there was nothing that was written into that episode. So technically, it wasn't a fear that Chibnall created. It was a fear that was already there because the history of what happens in that.
Very great point. Excellent.
So, he leveraged it absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally leveraged it. Well, don't you think that they all had some level? I mean, but you're right though. I mean, you have an entire season, and honestly, there was a possibility in every single episode for there to be a danger point and a well played danger point, but yet it never gets explored. We just
that's Doctor Who across the board. Let's be real.
Just get to the precipice and nothing happens.
No, but look what happened to Bill. Bill became a cyber person, sort of.
Correct, but I mean that was after a full season of adventures, 2 seasons of adventures.
No, man.
But, they went through a lot of chances where they could have gotten turned into something or killed, and
she almost got killed several times.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying.
And while I don't love Amy, Amy is like totally
Oh,
thrown to the wolves all the darn time.
All the time.
What are you
so
saying? I mean,
so I mean,
totally.
this is a constant thing in Doctor Who. The Doctor really doesn't. Yeah, he cares about his companions, but not really. he kind of he kind of let the Doctor just kind of lets the companions tag along and doesn't really pay any heed to their safety.
Not
I
really.
mean, you look at Donna. Poor Donna.
Oh, that was atrocious. That was so bad.
Talk about thrown to wolves.
Yeah, the entirety of
Quite
Turn
literally.
Left tells you, shows you, and exemplifies how her whole arc, she's literally thrown to the wolves. So you're like, oh, good Lord, you're so right
Yeah.
with this. So again, I guess we're proving our point that the Doctor's still the
Yeah.
Doctor. It's just
Yeah.
this Doctor. But in
That's
this episode, we're just bringing that full circle because I'm literally you land in this. They land on the ship and they walk right out. And this
Yeah.
and
And then they can magically breathe. Like, how do they magically breathe the
yeah,
air
they
then?
magically breed. And what's his name? Patronaki is like, you mean the gun on him, and then it's just he's like almost kills them, and they're all just standing there. It's like,
Yeah. No,
oh,
it has its faults, but this episode was probably one of the most enjoyable this season, honestly, for me. I really, really had a fun time with it. And it goes back to just, I think it's finally breathing the season. And the season, you could tell that the characters are finally allowed to breathe because we're not going deep into the history of each one of them. And Chibnall is allowed to go goofy and fun and just crazy action and just fun adventure story, which that's what this is. It's a pure adventure story.
I mean, it's almost like you had the first, the woman who fell to earth, and then you have this episode. So it's like, okay, well, what was that all the way in between? Because you could have had a much different story arc, right? Because the first and last, it's kind of like bookend.
I think, and I don't know why they didn't do this tie-in, but this is what I felt, is that these other episodes that they went into and that they encountered aliens from other planets, the planets that were in stasis should have been those planets. Or at least mentioned that they would have been in that planet, like they did with Tenet, with the stolen Earth. That would have been
when Donna realizes it when they're at the council. Yeah. Hello. Well, for me, I was yelling at the TV, going, "Oh my God, it's those planets! Yeah, they mentioned it way back when in the Ghost Monument. And that's right, she talked about it." And so I was like, okay, I had to draw my own conclusions.
Yeah, but I mean, it would have been nice to say, "Oh yeah, that's this planet, and this planet." At least say the name so we could. Oh yes, thank you. Finally, yes, it's confirmed. It is those planets. At least some type of, especially it's a children's show. So children aren't going to make that connection unless you go and listen to something like this. Or
you think Doctor Who is a kids show? No.
Oh.
No.
I mean, again, it's about drawing your own conclusions a heck of a lot. Almost in every episode.
I mean, I thought it was a bug in this crystal because of the way it was flitting about.
Yeah.
And then when they were like, it's planet, I'm like, oh.
That's so cool.
Planet in there. Okay, cool.
It took me a bit to realize that those were the planets themselves. I was like, wait, what? What? What are you saying to me? Okay, who here is completely confounded by how technologically brilliant Tim Shaw is. Because while we knew he was kind of technologically advanced and from an extremely vicious tech culture, what are they? I always forget what they're called.
The
Stenza. You're how in the heck, even in 3,000 years, did he manage to create and manifest that level of technology to be able to harness planets?
There's one line that just makes it all worthwhile that he says, and it's "you puny little brain," and he says that to the doctor, and the doctor looks dumbfounded for the first time ever. She just the doctor is literally like just staring off like, I can't believe he just called me that. The doctor's so confused in that one
puny
moment.
little brain could never understand. And in that moment, it was the truth, though.
Oh, 100%. It was so good. Like, just completely belittled the doctor, and the doctor had no way of knowing how to react to that because
there was no rebuttal in that particular moment because you have to really. Then it was like, yeah, okay, I get you. You really did do something that I didn't understand, so let me figure it out now.
But Tim Shaw himself wasn't 3,000 years old. He just got thrust 3,000 years, right?
No, but he's 3,000 years old because he survived all that time.
Yeah, he was there for 3,407 years.
Yeah.
That's why
he lived that long.
Hey, it reminded me so much of Davros. Come on, how many of you kind of felt like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, he was like all plugged up and in a special thing just to stay alive. Yeah,
I mean, we don't know how long the Stenza live, so maybe they can't live that long. Yoda style, 1,000 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, what was I think it was. What was the show? Maybe it was a movie where they had was it Riddick? I think it was Riddick.
The Chronicles of Riddick.
Where they had that one race who came and harvested planets.
Yes.
Took over planets.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Stenza for me reminded me of that. In fact, like the armor and the heaviness of Tim Shaw.
Yeah, that they look like the Linkin Park music video in the end. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Do you remember in Ghost Monument that what is the name of the character, guys? Oh my gosh! In Ghost Monument, the two racers to the left.
I thought that the guy who was
Angstrom and Epso.
Angstrom talks about the 5 planets.
Oh yeah.
She absolutely explains it, and then about the genocide.
Yeah.
And how lightly it was done. And how did you feel when you realized that Tim Shaw had this whole journey that they're taking and bouncing around all of these universes in time, and you realized that every single thing was tied into Tim Shaw's revenge?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Was that a what or what?
That is a what.
I was like, wow. And Chibnall keeps saying there's no overtying arc. I'm like, are you crazy? You literally tied this into almost every episode. Well, not Rosa and some other things, but still.
So, like we all know, the Doctor, what?
Lies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Always and forever. Always and forever.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a running theme of every writer in Doctor Who. We will never get the true facts from any of the writers ever.
No.
I was looking at it and that planet, and all I could think is, this is desolation. This is desolation. And lo and behold, it was literally tied to desolation.
Yeah.
It kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. The name of the planet, Ranskoor Av Kolos.
I like that name.
Right?
What is it backwards?
Oh, good point. Let's see. What is it backwards?
Solok. No, it doesn't make sense.
I bet you it's something else.
Yeah, probably.
You're giving him too much credit. Too much credit.
Well, or it's not an anagram. What is that?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I was like, if you mix the letters around and come up with something.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could probably come up with anything, but
yeah, probably.
Oh my God!
Probably like Daleks are coming or something.
Right.
So I was trying to, see what you really think about the. So we totally understand that we're looking at the emotional wing of Graham's entire story, right? We're looking at his journey of grief and loss and having to come back and face it. It would have been irreverent of them not to have brought that around to a full circle, I felt. And so, so when we finally get it, it was beautiful to have it. that the fact that Graham and Ryan switch places in this final episode, where Ryan has to be the stronger of the leader, the stronger willed one, to be able to support Granddad, and he gets to tell him I love him, and I love that face when he's like, "Don't you heard me? You heard me."
Well, I also feel by this episode, Ryan has grown up a bit. I think it took
a lot.
It unfortunately took Grace's death, for him to ride his bicycle, for him to get over himself, to finally be like, there is something bigger than myself.
And my disease and my disorder. Yep. And it's not that I'm downplaying it. Please, please, please understand that.
Oh, no. I get it.
To understand that having an illness of his specific type, a neurologic disorder, sometimes having belief in yourself and faith that you can step even one step out of 20 is the thing that keeps you going every day. And for him, he needed to find that. And by episode 3, we realized that Ryan had disconnected from that thing that had held him back for so long. He stopped thinking of in Kerblam is where all of a sudden after that his mindset shifts.
Yes.
Right?
I was about to say that. Yes. Absolutely it does, because he goes down the chute and he's like, oh, by the way, I have this, blah, blah, blah. But he goes through and he does it and he gets over it.
It's also, I think honestly, like his character has gone through a huge growth as well. And this is why I like Graham's character, is because he kind of goes through the different motions that we don't normally see in a character in Doctor Who, honestly. Let's be real. Because most of the time, it's usually the Doctor or one person that gets the spotlight. For this season, we're actually getting a lot of characters being spotlighted for the first time. And it's so fantastic seeing Ryan and Graham work together. That scene, that interaction, like you both mentioned, with them congratulating each other and finally giving the amazing fist bump. And then the line that Graham says that, what do we do now?
Yeah, that was so funny. That was so good. Sorry. And his hand just stays there. Yeah. It was so cool.
It was so awkward.
I don't think they gave enough play for Yaz.
No, not at all. Not whatsoever.
I felt like they would throw her a bone every now and again. But it reminded me of well, I liked Martha, but Martha was also a little flat. And she kind of just reminds me of Martha a little bit.
She has the potential, and the character could be so much more than was written in this season. And I think that is one of the only moments where you see a fault in character development was with Yaz, at least in my opinion. I don't see her being developed the way that she could have potentially been developed. Now, with that being said, I also love the fact that they chose a very diverse cast. And I love the fact that they chose these characters the way that they did. And the fact that there's representation with Yaz is a fantastic thing. Now, obviously, with Graham, Ryan, and Jodie taking on these roles, they kind of left Yaz in the shadow, just because they're such overwhelming personalities.
Well, again, Jyoti and I have a huge perspective on the character growth of Yaz in terms of our culture and us understanding.
Oh, sure.
The movement of the social relevance of her character and how Mandip is playing her. And I will say that they did not. They gave us a great promise to be able to bring her character in with a lot of gumption and a lot of gusto, and we didn't get it. At some point after Arachnids, all of a sudden, they oppressed her. I felt like they oppressed her. And I don't understand, because she's so wise. And if you think about it, how many times, as the doctor says, she's wise because she can. Yaz can figure out the science behind something in keeping with the doctor, and Yaz is the only one who can come up with something. I mean, reversing polarity. How the heck should Yaz know to do that?
Right.
Figures it out. But she does it with such a subtlety and such a quietness that I think people overlook it, that there's a brilliance in that subtlety and the quietness.
I would have. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that unfortunately they should have known that they needed to give her more emotional movement in order for people to connect to her.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen that aspect, but I also would have loved to have seen her more Sherlock Holmesian types of stuff, because I could see her as the one who is, you know, kind of the more nerdy one, the one that's figuring out these more sciencey things, and I just felt like, you know, she was more pretty background than super sleuth. And I agree. I think the word oppressed is correct. And I was disappointed by that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I mean, it all falls back to there's 4 characters in the TARDIS now. That's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot.
So
on the inside.
yeah, right. So I mean, there's gonna be moments and people that fall through the crack, and I hope maybe at least from what I see in the characters, I think Graham is gonna be leaving us next season. At least as a regular companion.
So. Yeah.
And I think that honestly, Yaz might have more to shine now with Ryan. And go back to the interactions that we saw in the Ghost Monument and the woman that fell to Earth.
The woman who fell to Earth, she was beautiful.
Yeah. And the way that they worked together was phenomenal.
Beautiful and bright and very crisp. Very crisp and very much, you know, very Watson and you know, Holmes type of thing. I felt that was beautiful, but what they really did is they really focused a lot on the emotional journey of Ryan and Graham, and the subtlety of that. So, and I get it, but at the same time, you have to be careful with doing this with characters who are underrepresented, because then they become misrepresented. Because, you know, I could have come to blows with Lewis and Nerdy Chap last week if they didn't back down a little bit. Because they don't understand misrepresentation is not always bad acting. Because it's 2 different things sometimes. It depends on what you do with that person. And if you give them the option to be able to act it in a certain way, or if you say to them, hey, you need to stay like this because this is what's going on. So we don't know. I mean, we don't know, right?
So do you guys think that they purposely kind of pushed the story of Graham and Ryan to appease those who are still mad that the Doctor was female representing?
Probably. I wouldn't doubt that.
And that's why possibly Yaz was more in the shadows.
I wouldn't doubt that, and hopefully next season, once the fervor boils down a little bit and is able to calm down, I think maybe we might be able to see, like I said, the Ryan and Yaz story with them 2 as companions, and then Graham just as a companion on Earth, and
taking on a Wilf kind of feel, which I think is completely appropriate, because I think
so too.
A fabulous thing for us to see. I was fully expecting in this episode when Graham comes up and he's like, hey Doc, can I talk to you for a minute privately? I was completely expecting to hear, hey, I'm going to kill him and then I'm leaving. So I really did. And
me too. I did too.
So, you know, to get, hey, you know, we're still going to keep going. It was interesting. It was interesting. But again, what do we know, right? So we have to just see what ends up happening with the New Year's episode.
Yeah, now we have to wait for 2020 also.
I know. Because originally we were supposed to get the reason why the New Year's episode was moved to New Year's is so that there would be an episode in 2019. And then 2019 would be the end of 2019 would be the beginning of the new season, and so they were going to be having 2 episodes in that year, right?
Yeah.
But that's not how it happened. So
Oh.
it was interesting. So how, I guess, like, are we gonna,
Let's just do a wrap up, with
wrap up on
what
this one?
what are your basically closing thoughts on it? What did you personally really enjoy the most of this episode? What was your favorite character, favorite scene, type of thing?
Here, you go first, Nisha.
Yeah, it's just so much. I mean, because we really didn't, because we oftentimes don't really truly go into the story, and I think for 2 seconds we kind of have to.
I mean, everybody saw the episode. That's why
Yeah,
it's
no,
like
everybody did, and I'm not going to. But one of my favorite pairings of characters for this entirety of the season is actually Andino and Delph, and I would really like at some point in life that we should be able to get a little bit more story on them, kind of like Jenny and Vashta, because I feel like there's so much potential to the 2 of them. I adore Delph.
Yes.
But they bug me because he's so ethically composed, and yet he is swayed by her and this. How in the heck did they believe that Chizim Shah is the creator? I wanted to know that. I don't get how that happened. I just don't get it, because they're brilliant. So how did they not see that he was lying? So of course there would have been no story if they didn't.
Right.
If they did. So, but it was, and then how at any point in existence did her moral compass not go, maybe I shouldn't destroy all the people on this planet when I move it into this thing. And he's going, we shouldn't be doing this, right? We shouldn't be doing this, right? And she's like, yeah, but the creator says to do it.
Well, I mean, that shows, it's a little criticism on blinding faith. Yeah.
Blind faith,
Blind faith. That's exactly what I was bringing it around to. You guys, you got it totally. Blind faith, man. We can't have it. We have to have our judgment. We have to use our moral compass. We have to remember morality is not completely absolute, because for them, they believed this was the right thing to do. And then he questioned it, and that's what the doctor tapped into, because she and Yaz looked at the 2 of them and were like, yeah, you don't really want to do this, do you?
Yeah.
And then they built on that. And
well, I think, it's also, besides it being, their world, I think it also touches on, obviously, the political climate that we're in now, and the blind faith of the creator, So I think that maybe that's looking into it too deeply, but I think that it is a message, because Doctor Who is so famous for doing this.
Oh yeah.
It is a message saying, hey, don't have blind faith. Think for yourself. Do the right thing.
Think for yourself, man, and do not choose to do something that is going to destroy cultures and societies and beings for the name of following the creator and the master. What is that? What is that? But guys, that was throwback Doctor Who, was it not?
Yeah, yep. Absolutely.
Because that's literally been a running theme. Ta-da, did it again. All of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
From the beginning, literally the first episodes of Doctor Who, the first Doctor, we're dealing with the very same thing. So I really, I enjoyed us being introduced to this omnipotent race who is...
there's only 2 of them, right?
There's only 2, because they can only exist as 2 ever. So there's 2, and then they exist for a millennia. What is that? That is such an interesting concept.
Right.
But they are creatively, and I wrote it because I thought it was the most interesting concept. It was so interesting. They are a people of Oh, they live the lifespan of a millennia. They're a duo species. There's only ever two of them. They're faith-driven dimensional engineers.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I
I was
love
like,
that.
that is
what?
really cool. Yeah,
And
That yeah, when the doctor says that faith-driven, was it dimensional
engineers. Yeah, that was
dimensional,
fascinating.
what a fascinating, fascinating concept,
Which
isn't
is
it?
another way. Which is another way to say God or goddess or anything, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Faith-driven, dimensional
But
engineer.
but they're constructors. They constructed all of these things, but they also
Right.
destroy them. I'm like, oh
Yes.
my God.
Uh-huh.
And I like where she says, I like precautions. I thought that that was a very, very interesting statement to make, that they're very important, because here you have had the doctor for literally 10 episodes throwing caution to the wind. I'm like, what do you
Yeah.
mean you like precautions?
Yeah.
Like
I think
literally,
the doctor was just saying it.
thank you so much, because that is, I wrote down the points for myself because I was like, this is so ridiculous. This is so ridiculous because this is not what you're doing. So, and then I thought really that it was so another fascinating concept is that Tizim Shah, which is Tizim Shah becomes Tim Shah, carries the entire hive knowledge of the stanza inside of himself.
Yes.
Wow!
But doesn't any hive mind, right? So
What
if you
if
think of
the
but if you
Borg?
think of the Borg,
Yep,
exactly,
that's
the
all I
Borg,
could think of. I was like, this is the Borg.
right? Well, when we first get introduced to Tim Jha, that's the first thing I thought of.
Yep,
Wow.
exactly right. Um,
I'm not a
and
huge Star Trek fan, so that's why I'm like I'm not gonna say anything about this.
Ah,
Hiding out here for a minute.
we're like Sybil with our fandoms anyway.
we're very civil. Well, I grew up on Star Trek, my friend. You know this already.
Oh
So,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh
um,
yeah.
and then we got that beautiful line, "A rip in space and time." I was like,
Hmm.
"Aw, throwback line. It comes every
Yeah,
once in a while. We get it.
it
Yay!"
does. It does.
Um, and then the harnessing of 5 planets, and then they have to find a way to bring them all back, and the doctor's like, "Yeah, I did this before, and I pulled your Earth back with my TARDIS
That
into
was
place,
great.
basically."
I
I was
love
like,
that. The
"Aw,
lasso around Earth, yeah.
this lasso around Earth." I'm sorry, I just had to do it, man. I was
It's
like,
like
"This,
Wonder Woman.
yes." Um, it was true. It was like Wonder Woman. Oh my God. I just I enjoyed it because of the throwbacks. And a lot of people might be
Yeah.
like, what are you talking about? But I just gave you all these examples of throwbacks.
Oh yeah.
The
Oh,
classic,
they've been scattered throughout this whole season, honestly.
yeah,
Let's be
all this
real. It's
classic
just
A
references.
you gotta
lot of
look.
Easter eggs.
A
Yeah, a lot of Easter eggs.
wonderful. I was
Mhm.
fascinated by this planet that they're on. I'm fascinated by Delph and Andino, and I want to know more about them. I'm fascinated with the fact that I think the doctor has finally figured out that she's been caution to the wind versus what the doctor normally is supposed to be, and
Right.
maybe the doctor's gonna finally figure out, boy, maybe I should pay attention to their lives a little more than I do. I mean, and then, oh my
Well, the
God,
doctor hasn't so far, so.
yeah, like never. And then finally the doctor gets a taste of so this is what happens when I don't pay attention and I just act. Because
Mhm.
people seek revenge on me. And so we finally get to see an age-old adage of Doctor Who, the revenge factor. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that he always ends up getting the something always happens that the revenge always happens to the doctor, and
mhm.
the doctor themselves actually create like this corruption in people, and that's always fascinated me too.
Hmm.
It's this
Well, if you
unintentional corruption, but it's still
Correct.
corruption.
Yeah.
right, well, I mean, you have, and I always considered like the master mistress relationship with the doctor kind of like the Batman and the Joker, right? So you always have,
Oh, I
you always,
love it.
you always have this nemesis, right? But the nemesis wasn't present, right? The nemesis was in each of these different characters, and then with a kind of penultimate Tim Jha this time.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting.
Agreed.
You know, because I miss Missy. I miss Missy, and I miss
Oh,
Vanessa.
I do
You know.
too. Trust me, I do too.
I completely miss Missy. Oh, good Lord. Yeah. I think,
Seriously.
so
Um,
what did you think?
Molly?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I've been kind of saying it all along, but to me, the episode I thought ended strongly. It ended the season strongly. I wanted more, as I mentioned before. I felt like we were just finally getting into the groove
Mm-hmm.
of the Doctor. I felt like, some of the episodes could have been stronger, yes, but I felt like it was a really kind of a good introduction. So, like, if you've never seen Doctor Who before, I think you'd have enjoyed the season, right? I think as a new season, new Doctor, new companions, new everything, and you had no knowledge of it at all, like we do, then I think that you would take it at face value, and it would be dependent upon whether you like the writing or not.
Yeah, totally good point, because you're right. It's and Chibnall even said it when we were at the premiere in New York, that this was absolutely written definitely for a brand new culture and generation of viewers. So
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Which I hope to always increases, because obviously if there's more watchers, then there's more gumption for them to do better and to really grow. And I'm glad that the rumors are false. I was actually quite upset when I heard them at first, because I'm like, you can't go, you just got there. and we fought so hard for you to get there. You can't go yet. So I was very upset. So I'm hoping that Chibnall stays too, but I think the showrunner is important, but not as important as the Doctor.
no, yeah, absolutely.
I agree. I think honestly, favorite scene for me will probably be that scene where Graham is having to make that decision whether to shoot Tim Shaw or let him live, and then the moment that as soon as he sees Ryan, that's where the decision is instantly made. Where Graham's like, "No, I can't do this. I can't fail this child. I can't make this impression. I have to." Be who I really am and be who Graham, Grace wanted me to be, and who Ryan deserves to have as a grandfather. And that's why he finally makes that decision to call him grandfather officially and give him the fist bump that's been teased all season long. And
come on, I love you. Yeah, I love you. Come on, okay.
I love you. Don't ask me to say it again.
Right.
I love you.
And that kind of personifies the whole season. That one little tiny clip that lasted maybe 5 minutes, and that kind of wrapped up the whole 10 hours of this show in these last 10 episodes. And it really just does so well for everything that we wanted to get across on the message, and this message of grief, this message of coming to an understanding that we're experiencing grief, and there's nothing that's going to take that grief away. Getting this revenge, getting this overcoming these things, that's just normal way of life, but you can't allow yourself to succumb to the grief.
Yeah. I liked also that the Doctor remembered that they could bring the TARDIS to themselves. Because she lost it before, but now she can call it on demand again. So, so I'm like, ha ha ha.
Well, it was enhanced by Tim Shaw.
Yes.
That was the only way she was able to call it in.
Yeah, but
why?
Yeah, but
because of what the
modulator thing.
The modulator thingy, and she used it and she turned it backwards, basically. I have to try and listen to the science all the time and see how much of it could actually be real.
I know, right?
My brain thinks like that when I'm watching Doctor Who, anything science-y, but in general, Doctor Who, I'm like, how much of this could actually really exist?
Right. I any other closing thoughts that you guys had about this episode in particular?
No, I mean, I did have a thought, and it's a simple one. It's basically I felt like after I had watched the arc and I'm listening to you guys, I feel like the 10 episodes there was an arc of Ryan and Graham, even more so
Yeah.
than the Doctor,
Yeah.
because the Doctor's journey is going to travel, right? It's going to keep
Mhm.
going, and I thought about it, and well, that is Doctor Who. The companions have their own story arcs that sit as an undercurrent and sometimes overlie that of the Doctor, and it isn't
Yeah.
until much later that we realize that there was a full layer, because it's layer upon layer that's actually the Doctor, but that overlaps everyone else's stories, and we don't often get to see them until we unwrap each individual story. So I really do feel there is a point at which we're going to unwrap the story of Yaz. We just haven't really gotten to that story yet because, well, it was only 10 episodes.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
true.
you're right. By doing this the way that they did, I think they're leaving the door for the exodus of Graham.
Yeah.
Well, that was my feeling. Remember, I was saying that to you guys before, is especially to you, Lewis.
Yeah.
I do only because, and I don't
After
think,
this episode, definitely 100%.
yeah. I mean, I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's a grief thing, and I think it's, I've had my adventures, but I'm gonna have my tea.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would agree with it, though.
I think
I'd be okay.
it's right. It feels right now. Like after this episode, this episode wrapped it up so nice and neatly. It
Yeah.
just it really put the final things that we needed to see in Graham's story. And
But then it also gives us something that's been age old for the new Who era. And then the later of the classic Who era, that there was a place for the Doctor to call home. That was a
Yeah.
place for the companions to rest their heads. And we would not have had that. It hadn't been established with this Doctor. And I believe that this tying up with the story gives us that. And we need that too as fans. We do need to have that portion, that bit of stability on Earth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because it was always there. So I don't know, again, if you agree with that, but if you see what I'm saying, Molly, I think
Yeah, I
maybe
do.
you get where I'm saying, because since Tom Baker, to be honest with you, we have always had the opportunity to go back to some stability,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In a
Well,
place
yes. Between that, Donna and her family,
the ponds, I mean,
the ponds. Yeah, I mean, so there's always something touching base there, and Graham could be that stabilizing factor where Yaz and Ryan go off with the Doctor and every so often they come back and they see Graham.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it's honestly, I see that going back to that because it's a solid format and it's a good format because that's gonna give Graham the character of the old wise man that's able to kind of give direction still to Ryan, but give Ryan and Yaz the opportunity to be the companions now, which will be really
Yes. And I do. I think they need to. I do think they need to bring it down to 2. I think the most you can have at any one time is 2. Only
it's just
because, yeah, that, and I just think it's a lot. Like I said, it's a lot, and the TARDIS. It's a lot for the writers.
Yeah.
It's a lot to put in a short 40-minute show.
Exactly. And it takes away if you have too many characters in there. So I think that having the 2 people 100% agree with that. So thank you so much, Molly. Thank you,
Of course.
Nisha, of course, for joining us on this episode, this final episode of this season, other than the special, of course. But we actually have an interesting development for next episode. We are actually going to be doing a live stream for the next episode through the Diversely Geek page. So, of course, anybody that's subscribed to this channel already, check out on our social media accounts, both through Man Bites Film, Man Bites Media, and Diversely Geek. We'll be posting up the links and everything that you need to know about that. And, of course, check out any of our podcasts that we post on manbitesfilm.com. Nisha, if you want to go ahead on Diversely Geek.
Yeah, and you'll be able to find us on diverselygeek.org. on our Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, everything you can think of under the sun, I feel like. And our podcast is, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and quite a few other sites now, and our YouTubes. Now, we will be having a plethora of content coming to you from the New Year's, which will include the wonderful Molly Marcus, who is now part of the Diversely Geek and My Geek Universe family. Yay! And also part of the Man Bites Media, I think, right?
Yep.
We have something pretty interesting coming your way. Us crazy nerds are going to be bringing you guys something pretty fun.
Revenge of the Nerds. Ooh.
Yes, we were so Revenge of the Nerds. Oh my God, it was on this week too. So really can't wait for that, and I'll definitely be looking forward to a new type of episodic coming to you from the new year. Man Bites Media and Retro will be coming out with something new, and so will we from the Diversely Geek Discusses point of view, and that's going to be fascinating. But we're going to leave that up to Joe at Life Into the West to go over on our next episode of Diversely Geek and to catch you guys up on that. And I cannot wait for our live stream on New Year's Day.
It's going to be fantastic.
So it's a party at my house, and we're going to be live streaming. Okay.
Nice.
Our reactions and how we feel and what's going to be going on. And so what we would love it if we'd be able to Skype our folks in, our team in, or have them in attendance. That would just be fun.
Sure. Send the details.
Yeah, right. And of course, now that the season's over, that doesn't mean that Doctor Who in Review is over, because we're actually going to be developing it into a show that will be talking about Doctor Who specifically, just like the title says. And what we'll be doing is each week we'll be suggesting an episode for us to watch together as a group again and discuss that episode in depth and go really nitty-gritty onto the episode that we'll be discussing. So each week you'll be a different person suggesting a different episode.
Yes. And then, we're going to hit the controversial, the loves, the not so loves, all the good stuff. And that's fine. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to confine it to the new Who either, just so everyone knows. So that's going to be
yay.
And we have an entire year to work on getting all of that ready before the next season comes out. So
yes, indeed. So I'm so glad that you guys were able to tune in and listen to this throughout these last 10 episodes. But stay tuned for so much more, because we're going to be bringing you so much more amazing content. And we'll see you guys next week for another episode of Doctor Who in Review, presented by Diversely Geek and Man Bites Film.